There were one or two new things. Wearing my sort of slightly cynical hat, years of experience, something that was almost half a sentence, which was doing a lot of work in terms of the government's sums, making the ledger add up, was the Chancellor mentioned that he's going to give a bit more money to HMRC to, quote, make sure that the tax that is owed is paid, i.e. clamping down on tax avoidance. Yeah, £4.5 billion more. That's a huge amount of money to assume HMRC is going to be able to summon up by chasing people that it believes owe more tax. That hasn't attracted much attention, but it's doing an awful lot of heavy lifting there. I also thought it was quite interesting how the Chancellor philosophically said, he almost hinted that if the Tories stay in power, they're going to almost try and abolish national insurance altogether.
Yes.
The double taxation of work is unfair. And, you know, I've been covering budgets for the thick end of 25 years. I'm older than I look, obviously. And that is a good point. Why is it that tax on wealth is taxed once, but tax on work is taxed twice? And talking about tax on wealth, also quite interesting, a very Tory measure was to cut capital gains tax on the disposal of residential properties that aren't your principal residence from 28% to 24%.
Liam, just to jump in there, that is the most perhaps profound political moment of that part of the speech. This was the Office of Budget Responsibility, the OBR, the bogeyman of the right, saying that cutting this tax will actually raise revenue.
That is because, Tom, the way the UK property market is at the moment, it's stuck. No one wants to sell because they don't want to incur massive capital gains. When you've had years of house price increases, you're sitting on these massive capital gains. If it's residential property you don't live in, then you want to, bequeath it to the next generation, make it an inheritance tax problem rather than a capital gains tax problem. All this will sound like gobbledygook to a lot of people watching and listening, but you're right. It's an important political and philosophical point. Here you had Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak, two people who have been lampooned and derided by the right of their own party for not even being Conservatives. They've overseen the rise of the tax burden to the highest level in 70 years. How can they possibly be Conservative? They're saying we basically want to abolish national insurance and we are actually lowering taxation on wealth. They're not just Tory things to do, they are red in tooth and claw Tory things to do. This is a political fight back by Sunak and Hunt within their own political party. And I agree very much with Gloria, master as she is of parliamentary procedure and so on, given her long experience in the Commons. The fact that they've briefed all this out earlier, it does give Keir Starmer longer to respond. But Chris Hope, also equally experienced, is right. This is really going to narc the Labour Party because the SNP are taking away their thunder. This is a real big moment in the political calendar, possibly the last big fiscal event before the general election. A lot of the nations watching, they'll have tuned out now because they don't really know what's going on. Keir Starmer didn't get to have its say. I'm sorry to have to say this, but a very tactical, some would say cynical move by the SNP, though they, of course, would deny that.
Yes, exactly. And Liam, of course, no hiding the fact that a lot of people in this country are deeply concerned about the state of our public services. What was there for the person who's worried about the state of the NHS, the state of education, the state of public services in general?
Well, just as Jeremy Hunt wants to steal Labour's clothes on non-doms by weakening the non-dom tax regime, by making it a lot less generous, he is stealing Labour's clothes. That was a flagship Labour policy. I thought it was rhetorically quite adroit by him. The money that we're making by abolishing the non-dom tax regime, or certainly changing it, Labour want to spend that on higher spending. We want to spend that on tax cuts. That will delight a lot of the Tory backbenchers, and it will delight a lot of Tories who say they're not going to vote Tory now and they want to vote Reform. I thought that was really quite interesting. I think it's also interesting that they've returned to Rishi Sunak's theme about the importance of the hospitality industry. Employs 1 in 10 people in the UK, employs lots of people part-time, lots of, partners who are working part-time to keep money coming into a household, a lot of younger people who wouldn't necessarily be seen dead thinking about voting Tory. But if pubs are getting a lift, if those alcohol duties are frozen, if only for another 6 months, I'm sure there'll be an extension after that. If the Tories remain in power, then that's good for the hospitality industry and might actually, there might be people saying relatively positive things about the Tories in the pub tonight, but we'll wait and see.